views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the commentators, guest, and host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the policy or the views held by Tobago Updates or this network. Tobago Updates or this network cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Vox Populi. Vox Populi, of course, means the voice of the people, and that is the purpose of this show. This evening, we have three topics for consideration and discussion. If you're so mindful to join the conversation, then I'll give you a telephone number and you can feel very free to call in and share your thoughts via telephone. Of course, it's television, personally for me and for years on doing this talk show and so, I don't normally do interviews and that sort of thing. I do what I have to do. I share my thoughts and so. So if there is an interview, then of course I'll have the luxury of looking at my phone to read the comments. But I promise you, as the show progresses, I will try my best to facilitate that arrangement and so, with looking at the phones and replying to some of your comments. I don't know, call me old school, but as I said, there is a telephone number. I'll invite you to call and share your thoughts. Having said that, we have three very serious subject matters for discussion tonight. Let me just see this. Okay, great. We have three very serious subject matters for discussions tonight. And those subject matters, of course, is an issue with democracy that arose in this country. That is one. Then, of course, we have I'll give you a sneak peek into the audit report, and I'll tell you some things and so. And thirdly is the issue of the cargo ferry and so. So cargo ferry. So we'll discuss those matters, and we will start now. Let us deal with the issue of this democracy and so. Now, citizens of the Republic, we live in a country where all our institutions have collapsed. This country, in fact, is unrecognizable. Completely unrecognizable. All our institutions are either intimidated, politically saturated, or interfered with. That is where we live. We live in a Trinidad and Tobago where the buffers that came out of the Marlborough House Conference that created all these constitutional committees and commissions and so on have been troubled, interfered with in some way by this dictatorial government. And there were governments in the past also. The point is, all our constitutional institutions have either collapsed or are grasping by the brink of their fingertips. One such institution is the Election and Boundaries Commission. I tell you that, my friends, because a very glaring example, a very, very glaring example have manifested itself in very recent vintage. Let me tell you what that example is. The recent vintage of which I speak is this. Now, there was a local government election on the 14th of August, Monday, 14th August. Well, something very strange happened in that election. Close to 80% of the country did not vote. They stayed home. And the persons who participated in that election were the sycophantic bases of the both political parties that triumphed, and after their own individual triumph, it tied, but those parties confusing me. Because south of the Caroni Bridge shouting out, "We win," and the East-West Corridor party shouting, "We win too." They both cannot be correct. Now, I know if you have a tie, me win, you will lose. But that is an arithmetic for them. That is arithmetic for them. But the point I wish to make is that it is really the basis of those parties that voted. And now local government decisions and its management and so are confined to the bases of those two parties. That having been said, that is good, because you know what? Those who did not vote participated in the democracy also. And those who voted, notwithstanding how minute their numbers are, they too participated in the democracy. And we are being governed in the local government realm in this country by a minority decision of the citizens. And you know what? That too is democracy. But the democracy was interfered with. The democracy was intimidated. The democracy was threatened. The democracy was harassed. And when I say harassed, not like Leroy George harassing me, I put some post up and I said, you know, the show is on. Because of course, you know, there's struggles with the airline and so. So whenever I would make the arrangement to travel to get to Tobago to do this, because nobody will turn me around from doing this, and I will not abdicate my responsibility to you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I have to do this. I mean, there is a lot of harassment and intimidation with doing this and so. Only recently, the PNM and some others got their friends in Tata and so to attempt to censor and intimidate me and so. But I have news for them. I am not breaking the law. I will not break the law. And nobody could turn me around. Because he that started a good work in me is faithful and just to see it to the end. So I had to deal with that. So somebody sent this message to me suggesting some things at Leroy George. And I want to tell you something. Don't tell me nothing about Leroy George. Leroy George is the academic and textbook description of a pedantic ignoramus. Do not engage me and send messages to me about Leroy George. But I'll say this to Leroy George handlers. I was talking about harassing. I'll say this to Leroy George's handlers. You did not make a good decision in the PNM to shadow Leroy George with me. And I suspected you attempted to use Leroy George to shadow me and my public comments and this show and so. Because just like me, Leroy George had a prison experience. So if you think taking an ex-prisoner to shadow an ex-prisoner, if that was your consideration, that is making no sense. Because me and Leroy George is chalk and cheese. And the truth is, Leroy George is not qualified to be in the same room with me. So if that is your plan, me, Skippy, will not be engaged in Leroy George. So you all don't send me these nonsense he put up. I'm not interested in what Leroy George have to say. Leroy George, own bitterness is eating him out. I prayed for him once. I prayed for him twice. There are other people for me to pray about. Let Leroy George fall on his own sword. But nobody do engage me concerning that pedantic ignoramus. That is what he is. Having said that, so the harassment continues. And I was telling you about the threat to democracy. And let me tell you one glaring example that recently happened in this country. So there was the election on Monday, the 14th of August. There was a tie between the UNC and the PNM, and both parties and their candidate, one Miss Garcia and another, I'll give you the guy name, I'm trying to look for his name here, and another, one Miss Garcia and another, but I'm not seeing his name here. But let me just call them the two candidates for now. But I know him. I mean, I'm not sure if he wants me to call him nickname. We just call him Pundit, because he don't drink, he don't smoke. We lie, man, he go drink water, he go drink juice. I remember one day at the office. Now everybody in the office know when I say, I go and take a coffee, I'm going for a coffee. Everybody know what I mean by going for a coffee. So he keeps saying, I say, hey, I go and get a coffee. So this man say, well, I want coffee too. So I making my coffee for him. And then he said, no, I don't drink it. So he said, no, I don't drink it. The point I'm making is that, so I just accustomed calling him Pundit. So perhaps that is why it took no time to write his name. But let's just for now call him the UNC candidate. And we'll call Ms. Garcia the PNM candidate. Both of them got 623 votes. The UNC candidate requested a recount. The first recount revealed that the UNC candidate got 624 votes. The PNM the same 623, and the PEP got 81 and so. Now the PNM subsequently to that, and they declared him the winner. They declared him the winner. And I want to evidence the EBC's declaration of that man to be the winner by putting up what I will now call Exhibit 1. They declared him the winner. This is Exhibit 1 with the EBC declaring, his name would be here, declaring the UNC candidate to be, his name is Jaisinhu Domingo Gustav Rigsby. He was declared the winner by 1 vote. Come back to me, please. And so the PNM, after the tie, the first recount that declared him the winner, the PNM requested a recount. After requesting that recount, the result of that recount declared that the PNM won with 625 votes. What is the issue here? Let me tell you what is the issue here. There were 2 votes that were contentious ballots. So the presiding officer agreed that they were spoiled ballots. The returning officer agreed there were spoiled ballots. On the occasion of the first recount, the EBC official, which was one of the deputy, not registrar general, the deputy election officer, declared those 2 ballots to be spoiled ballots. And so they said, no, this man win. Well, something happened we say in media world and radio and thing. Something happened when we say, in the meantime and in between time, something happened. Let me tell you what happened. One, now the UNC was represented by, it's important to tell you this. It's important to tell you this, and I mean no disrespect to my friend who are going to put up here. I mean no disrespect to him. In fact, we were in the same law school together. When I was in first year, he was in second year. And we always maintain that friendship up until today. I am speaking about Brian Big. He would be exhibit number 2. Put that up for me, please. This is Brian Big. This is young Brian Big. Brian Big, keep him up there while I say some things about him. Brian Big he's an attorney at law. He's a former temporary senator, but he's also the Northeast coordinator for the UNC on its national executive. Please come back to me. And watch, no, hold it there, mate. I want you to watch carefully who is in the background. Watch who is in the back of Brian Big. I want you, Trinidad and Tobago, watch who is in the back of Brian Big. Watch her. You look at her and tell me if she's happy, if she's standing there pleasantly. You watch at her and you see the contempt and condescending way she's looking at Brian Big. And come back to me and I'll tell you what that means. I'll tell you what I just asked you to look at there, because they say a picture tells 1,000 words. You watch that? Let me tell you what that means. So, look who. So this young Brian Big, the president standing in the back when she was the president of the Senate, as she then was, and so swearing him in as a temporary senator. In other words, my friend, so he's known to her. He's known to her. But something happened. Brian Big represented the UNC. Here who they sent to represent the PNM in that second recount, where those 2 ballots, and I'll tell you something about those ballots in a very short moment, where those 2 ballots became valid ballots after being rejected by, and I told you before, the presiding officer, the returning officer. They were rejected by those people. They were rejected in the recount. And then up came a deputy commissioner of the EBC. Brian Big were representing the UNC, young simple, and this is what I said, I did not mean by any disrespect to my friend. Young, simple, humble Brian Big was representing the UNC. You all know who was representing the PNM in that recount? One Colm Imbert. And you know why I was telling you the president as she is now? And I tell you, look at her and watch you watching Brian Big. I'll tell you about that too. Her mother-in-law, the president, mama-in-law, and Colm Imbert were the ones who represented the PNM. And one would ask themselves, well, what is the problem with that? Well, let me tell you what is the problem with that. Colm Imbert is not an official executive member, rather, of the PNM. He's no longer the party's chairman. He holds no office in the PNM except merely being a member. But he represented, thank you very much, that man is a crack shot, I like him. Colm Imbert is no official in the PNM. He is no chairman in the PNM. Again, he is no party official. He holds no office in the PNM. This recount had nothing to do with, this is not a government issue. This was party issues. And so the person the PNM party ought to have sent was one of their party officials. And the reason why Brian Big was there is only because Brian Big is the Northeast coordinator on the UNC's national executive. So the Arima districts and so would be part of his purview in his party. Colm Imbert was no official PNM. But you know why he went to do the recount? After the presiding officer rejected the ballots. The returning officer rejected the ballots. Colm Imbert was acting as the prime minister. So little simple Brian Big drive up there with his little put X-Trail. Colm Imbert went there with PM1, with flags, with army men, with mass, machine gun, policemen in black outfits, Uzi, Galil, Glock. They surround the building. They search the building with dog. They sniff. There. Intimidation. And since the president, as she is now, is the person who appoints the EBC or revoke the appointment of EBC commissioners, you think the EBC commissioner that presided over that recount, after the presiding officer of the polling station and the returning officer of the district declared the ballots to be null and void, to be spoiled ballots, the EBC official, in strong person with high office and thing, their positions are hinged to the president's appointment or revocation. So Colm Imbert went there with all the might of being the acting prime minister. And when you're acting as prime minister, you are the prime minister. And the president mother-in-law, the president have to appoint the person who did the last recount. So she mother-in-law, Colm Imbert with all the might and power of the office of prime minister. And so they overturned the decision and allowed two ballots. Let me describe those ballots quickly to you because this is not only what we're discussing tonight. One ballot, one of the ballots, the person clearly did. You know, you see, speaking truth, it is like writing fear, Leroy. It only comes by practice. So I have no intention to gerrymander the narrative to sway anybody's mind. I am going to tell you barely what the truth is. So one of the ballots had the proper X inside the box next to the PNM's candidate name. But on that same ballot, there was an X outside the box next to the PNM text, the UNC candidate's name. So ordinarily, in common law, in convention, or properly understood by anybody involved in election matters and so on, who work on election day and who have experience and undergone election training and so, you know that is a spoiled ballot. Because even if it's outside the box, as long as it is in the same line with the name, then it's considered a good ballot. In this case, one ballot was properly in the box, one ballot was outside the box, but neatly and in the same line of the UNC candidate. So in other words, that ballot, my friends, had 2 X's. That ballot had 2 X's. I wish to say no more about that ballot, and I leave it to you to determine for yourself if that is a spoiled ballot or not. The other ballot, you all remember, producer, I know this is a serious show. I know this is a serious show. But you know, long ago there was this thing on Sesame Street with Cowboy X. See if you could find it for me, please. I want to play it. I know this is a serious show, but it's important for me to say this. The other ballot, like that person just went there and just take the X, the thing they give you to stamp the X, and he just X. He X out the whole ballot. He flip over the ballot. He or she, sorry. Flip over the ballot and the X. One of the X happened to fall on the PNM candidate name. 3 fell on the UNC candidate name. After Coleman Burt and the president mother-in-law went there and browbeat Brian Big and intimidated impliedly by the offices and so, the whole and their connections and so, because the returning officer, the presiding officer said those can't be good. This EBC official, who is beholden to the president, decided that those 2 ballots I just described there to you, Trinidad and Tobago, are valid ballots. And so now they have declared this seat valid and to be now represented, having been elected by 625 votes, Ms. Garcia. With those 2 ballots, I leave that, Trinidad and Tobago, to your consideration and to your judgment. And so, of course, that matter is now in the court. That matter is now in the court. Exhibit 4, the lawyers in that matter for the UNC candidate I'm advised is Kavita Munasa. Bright little girl, I know her. Know her well. I was called her Little Miss. There's another one, Kyle Taklal Singh. That what he has in the back there is what you call a red bag. He's not a senior counsel as yet. But you earn a red bag when you dispose of yourself with great skill and knowledge and wisdom and so. And let me put it this way. I don't know him to have lost in the Privy Council yet. So having that red bag is really a honor that King's Council and seniors and so at the Privy Council level give you for disposing yourself well. I advise also that Dinesh Rambali is also one of the lawyers in that matter. I do not propose to ask you what you think about it. I just describe how those ballots are to you, and I leave that to your determination whether or not those are spoiled ballots or whether they are valid ballots. Whether or not the president mother-in-law and Coleman Burt acting as prime minister after the EBC on 2 occasions declared those to be spoiled ballots, but for the intervention of Coleman Burt and the president mother-in-law, and the person involved in that election is the president's sister-in-law. Those ballots that would ordinarily be spoiled ballots have been declared by the EBC to be good and valid ballots. I leave the rest to you, Trinidad and Tobago. I want us now to move on to. Now I'm going to leave this issue of the. I'm giving you all a sneak peep into the audit report tonight. I'll show you some pages. I'll show you some pages tonight. I'll show you some pages. Now I could imagine how those pages are causing some bowel and anal trepidation in some, but I'll show you those pages. Well, I'll leave that for last, but I'll show you some pages. But I want to deal with this old boat. Now, not our old boat policeman here in Tobago, not our old boat Melville, not him, not we good old boat. But I want to deal with this old boat. Understand the old boat name MV Esperanza. Now let me tell you. Yeah, thank you. MV Esperanza. That's the name, Now, if this was not serious, this would have been funny. I mean, take a look at that boat. Keep it up there for a while for me, please. Keep it up. No, really, I can't help it. If this was not, oh, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. No, serious. I don't want to be treated this like a joke and it's a serious issue. Producer, I've really... Oh, Lord. Producer, please. Let me take a minute break and let me control back myself, because you'll understand why I am laughing after I tell you some things about what caused that old boat to show up here. It's a serious matter, This matter involves corruption at a very high level, This old boat is not about the engine in one boat that burnt and they need to get a replacement, This is about a minister of government enriching him or herself. Oh, you catching me? This is about a minister of government enriching his or herself to the tune of $73 million over the Cabo Star, That is now replaced in the interim with that old boat, Producer, let's take a minute and we will return.
Full Disclosure with the executive every Thursday at 8 p.m. only on Tobago Updates. Real questions and honest conversations with the sole aim of keeping you fully in the know. Full Disclosure with the executive every Thursday at 8 p.m. only on Tobago Updates.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the commentators, guest, and host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the policy or the views held by Tobago Updates or this network. Tobago Updates or this network cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.
Folks, you really have to forgive me, because I was laughing. Let me just tell you something. Like, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. I think that is what I want to say. Because there's a next thing. I want to give you this quick example. I don't want to go over 9 o'clock tonight and thing. I want to give you this quick example. There are some things politicians do. And let me stop beating around the bush. There are some things this PNM politicians and PNM government do. And they do it on the basis that they have already concluded that the population is stupid. So nobody will be able to recognize what took place. So they come up with this old boat because the engine in the Cabo Star caught fire, and they think that the people will quarrel sufficiently to say, that is the old boat or you're saying is that we don't want our boat. And when the Cabo Star come back on, then the natives would put down their puny arms of discontent and so. But if we look at that port situation, that Cabo Star and this MV Esperanza, if we look at it with a simplistic eye and a simple view, then we would be saying to the politicians, the PNM politicians and the PNM government, we are what you think we are, and that is stupid people. You see this thing, and it's a real PNM thing, about paving and patching roads. Wrong election time, and everybody does say, even Shadow had it in some way, say, I feeling something, election coming. We could gauge election when we see road paving, because everybody in the population believe that the roads are paved around election time, and the reason why they are paved around election time is to make the population happy. O thou of little knowledge. That is not why it happens. But the politicians are happy. You think that is why it happens. That road paving exercise around election time is politicians in government collecting their gratuity. In other words, when they give out, and we had it recently here in Tobago, you all remember before election, a executive council note was approved by the last administration, and they dance and they prance and they wine and they dine, and it concluded itself into an audit report. Well, that is what that is. So around election time, you look at your finances, you pass some cabinet notes and so, and you give out emergency contracts. You give it to Tom, Harilal, John, Leroy, Charles, everybody, you give it to them. But you give it to them with the understanding that don't really do the work, or if you're doing it, don't do much, because we have to keep the money. Remember, we have to, that money is for retirement. Don't go and really do the work too much, Just do it wrong election time, up to the night of election, nobody cares about that. And don't you realize, if you so want to do the roads, you so want to pave road and fix road, you realize the election, they don't want no road paving, nothing. They'll pave up to the day before to make you happy. But election day, nobody will pave no roads. And depending on who win, the project continues or it discontinues. And most of the time it discontinues. And sometime I passed by a road recently there in Chamflair, and I asked myself, like, these politicians just come back with a pickaxe and dig up back this road after they pave them for election. So I passed there recently, the road well paved. Then I passed back the same holes that they patch open up and even more deeper. And I say, wait, like the politician came back here with a pickaxe and dig up back this place. The point I'm making is that don't get caught up in that sham. Because politicians are happy when you think it's an election gimmick. When they want you to think that, they're happy you thinking that. Because for them it's not. What it really is a scandalum magnatum. And this is the case with that MV Esperanza. I propose to walk you through it quickly. Because you see, seeing the old boat and the Cabo Star engine burning down, you have to look below the surface to understand what this old boat limping from Port of Spain to Scarborough mean. A woman pushing a baby in a pram could move faster than that. So don't vex that they send an old boat. Understand why the old boat, what caused the old boat, and understand this whole issue about the Cabo Star engine being on fire. What does it mean? What is this about? I propose to assist you in that regard. And to understand that, my friends, we must look at the historical antecedents and the background story of how we ended up with the Cabo Star to begin with. What is the Cabo Star about? We must remember, and I did take some notes, so you'll forgive me for bowing my head ever so often. We must remember, you will all remember, initially, there was the Panorama, the MV, the Geltin, well, I think the Geltin, there were the boat, all those boats. The Bird of Paradise, the Geltin, the Scarlet Ibis, then eventually we got the Panorama and so. And so traveling between Trinidad and Tobago, now, you have to forgive me. I never really checked the hours, but it seemed to me to be a long time. All I know, if you leave 11 o'clock in the night, day cleaners meet you now pulling into Port of Spain. And if you leave Port of Spain 2 o'clock in the day, it's 8 and sometimes 9 o'clock you will meet Scarborough. So that is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's a 6-hour journey. One Patrick Manning, may his soul rest in peace, traveled and saw the fast ferry arrangement in Europe and said, no, this ought to be the arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago. And you all remember, now I'm going to spell the word, because my pronunciation does always get me in trouble. So they brought a vessel, C-A-T. Right. They brought that vessel, the cat, yeah, they brought the cat. But the cat its knottage was a bit too much for us, and the terrain of the water coming up the north coast and so. And so remember, sometimes you meet Port of Spain, ambulance at a park up there to care away who's sick, who want to dead, those sort of people getting heart attack. It was like, what else call these things with the big board and you're going on the waves, and it was like surfing. Right? It was like surfing, flying out wave, and but so the Manning administration recognized it to be a good idea, but they had an inappropriate vessel. And so notwithstanding they had the inappropriate vessel, so they did a trial with the cat. And they decided to go with bay ferries. And I'll tell you something about bay ferries as opposed to hostel as we proceed. They decided they'll go with bay ferries. So bay ferries provided for us 2 vessels, the Express and the Spirit. Right? The Express and the Spirit. But when Rowley won the election in 2015, he and Rohan, they cancelled bay ferries and they appointed a local Trinidad group Magdalene. I can't remember. Magdalene is the only thing that comes to my head at this time. But they appointed this local Trinidad collaboration that were really made up of friends and family and party supporters and relatives to people close to the government. Now that, my friends, was really an opening for what they wanted to do. So they created a problem so that we'll accept their solution. Because let me tell you something. When you're bawling in pain, sometimes even somebody kissing your cut, you just feel you get at ease. So they created a problem so that they could treat the problem with a placebo. That was the beginning of why we end up with this old boat. So they canceled Bay Ferries. They created this new thing that did not work. In fact, so much so it did not work. A lot of people, and they did not tell anybody, but I will tell you tonight. The first trip one of the locals from Magdalene attempted to do when going back to Trinidad, an untrained captain ran the express aground in Sealots because he did not know the steering or the control lost power, and he did not know what to do, and he ran it aground in Sealots. Everybody in this country know the professionalism of Bay Ferries and how they conducted their affairs on that vessel. If they say they're leaving 8 o'clock and they're arriving in 2.5 hours, by 7:45 the gangway is up. And in 2 hours 15 minutes the gangway is down. That was Bay Ferries. And the locals, it's Magdalene Group and so, have caused the spirit to run into what could be described to be disrepair, and none of them, like the people in Bay Ferries, had the capacity to repair it. So that is how the problem started. They created the problem so they could give the placebo, not a solution, I want you to hear me, to give the placebo effect, which is what we are being distracted with, and not minding with business. We're not minding with business. So while that was taking place, two gentlemen, claiming to represent Trinidad and Tobago government, were scouting all over Europe, looking for a vessel to buy on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago. They were looking for a cargo vessel to buy on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago. And they found one. And after they found it, a check was made out. You all remember this story? When a check was made out to a company known as Bridgman's. Well, I remember it like if it was yesterday. Because Mark Bassant, he went after me. The difference with Mark Bassant is that he was doing television. So if I was doing television then, as I'm doing television now, then I would have recorded it and show you. At that time I was doing radio. So what I had to do was do a live show which included the voice note and so from the landlord of Bridgman's in Canada. When we arrived at Bridgman, purported office, where this government raised a check for Bridgman in the sum of hundreds of millions of dollars, US that is. The landlord told us he's on record. I did a live show, Mark Bassan have the video footage and so of that. That's shared around this country already. But you see, all us forget. The landlord said, no, that man not living, they not here again, you know. They can't pay rent, that business bust, that business going through, that business bankrupt. They can't pay rent, the compound had chains and so on it. So they said that business gone. But Bridgman, a bankrupt company in Canada, is who this government dealing with concerning the Cabo Star. Right? So the checks were made, the office will tell you that. And how did they bring in the Cabo Star? You see, you all must not forget these things. You remember it had a vessel here known as the Galicia? The white, nice one with cabins and all of that. The Galicia was operating in Trinidad and Tobago at a fee of 12,000 US dollars a day. 12,000 US dollars per day. They even offered to sell the boat to the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. They would sell the Galicia boat to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And you remember they had all kind of bacchanal thing they making with the Galicia people, because this is what happened. When Rohan and Rowley and the new government and so went in there, they start to harass the Galicia management and agents and so. And then they start putting the Galicia on short-term contract. Now you tell me, which ship owner would have a ship and working the ship day by day like if they're working a PH taxi? They said, no, this is a ship. And if you want to engage us, you have to engage us properly. If our contract is ended, you have to engage us properly. And the way to engage us, we can sell you the vessel. You'll bring your team from Trinidad. They can understudy us. We will sail with them for a year with equivalent sailing ranks and so. So you'll have captain, chief mate, chief engineer, first mate. And you bring on your crew, we'll train them. And then in a year, we will depart and the vessel is yours. Or you have to give us a contract to remain here. But you can't be walking like a Uber that you just call every time you need to run up Tobago to carry cargo. This government pick a fight. They pick a fight with the Galicia and its agents and management and so. You remember they had Coast Guard all here in Tobago threatening to arrest the Galicia ship and its crew and all of that. You all forget this? And eventually the Galicia people had to go to the courthouse with this government. And the courthouse had to instruct the Coast Guard to escort them to the Atlantic, which by the way in Tobago is just around so. And the Galicia went their way. Well, when they went their way, we had some struggles with goods coming between Trinidad. You all remember that? When they bring in this barge and all kind of thing. You couldn't get toilet paper, you couldn't get nothing. The place just hard. And then Rowley as Prime Minister, he never came to Tobago. Remember, he passed all the truckers who were outside on the port there, right out there on the port, asking to see him and talk to him. But he came up, he passed them straight, and the only person in Tobago, it's on the record that he discussed the cargo issue between Trinidad and Tobago with, was when he went down by Morshed and lappy foot on Morshed porch to discuss it. Passed everybody, the vendors, the traffickers, the truckers, everybody, ignored them. You all forget that? Well, I have not forgotten that. So they created a problem. And they bring in this badge that caused people to become even more angry and disgusted about the problem. And then, the savior came in. And the savior was Mr. Cabo Star. So we rejected offers and a boat that was working for 12,000 US a day. And then we brought in the Cabo Star. And I want to tell you something about the Cabo Star. The Cabo Star was working in Central America for 5,000 US dollars a day. Yeah, the Cabos, they were working for 5,000 US dollars per day. The new owners that bought the Cabo Star, now everybody's saying Bridgman, but talking tongue saying is really a government minister. Bridgman is a sham. Bridgman is fake. Bridgman does not exist. The Cabo Star is owned by a government minister. I'll give no clues whatsoever, none. But it's owned by a government minister. That Cabo Star was working in Central America for 5,000 US dollars a day. It was bought by its new owners for $3 million. 3 million US dollars. And after being working in Central America for $5,000 US a day, purchased for 3 million US dollars. You know how much the new owners, whether it's the government minister or it's Bridgman, whoever own it, you know how much they rented it to Trinidad and Tobago for? 26,000 US dollars a day. And when you do the calculation from the time they contracted it until today, somebody in Rowley's cabinet, I don't know who, somebody in Rowley's cabinet have earned 73 million US dollars and counting. Or for a boat that was working for 5,000 US a day, you buy it for 3 million US dollars. You mash up the perfect Galacia that were working well for 12,000 US dollars a day, and you give me an already old boat. Not the old boat, not the new old boat, the old boat. Cabo start talking about. You bring that was working for 5,000, buy it for 3 million US, and now you're renting it to this government for the sum of 26,000 US dollars a day. But here, what was the catch in that? The catch in that, my friends, is that, remember the Cabo Star was never to be a permanent vessel? Remember they said, no, we'll have to use this until we send out tenders to buy a new vessel. We buy the APT James. We buy the Boco Reef. Up until now, we buy the cargo vessel. Up until now, we buy the cargo vessel, but we buy our APT James, we buy the Boco Reef. And the Cabo Star is being renewed every 3 months, every 6 months, and so. I want to tell you all something quickly about this. I want to ask the Canadian authority tonight, if you know that a bankrupt company from your jurisdiction is here in Trinidad and Tobago, while being declared bankrupt there, is earning and have earned, is earning 26,000 US dollars a day, and so far that have accumulated itself to the tune of 73 million US dollars. And they don't pay for nothing because it is the Port Authority that maintains it, that does everything about it, not the owners. That I'm waiting on some paperwork for. I'm waiting on some paperwork on that, and we will speak again about that Trinidad and Tobago. So they lick up the Cabos, they lick up the Galacia, lick it up and things. And after they lick up the Galacia, they create problems with it. They got the excuse they needed. Remember, they tried the badge, they gave me more vex. And they got the excuse they needed to bring in the Cabo Star, which was supposed to be a temporary vessel, because they would send out tenders to buy a new cargo vessel for Trinidad and Tobago. They buy the Boco Reef, they buy a PT James, but they just keep renewing every 6 months the Cabo Star. I call on the government of Trinidad and Tobago to tell the people of Tobago and reveal it very bare who are the true owners of the Cabo Star. Because the Cabo Star seems to be a special vessel, my friends. It seems to be a very special vessel. You all remember a minister of government in this country was in Miami. The Cabo Star was down as it is down now. But a minister of government in this country just decided he wanted to help out the whole country. So he passed somewhere and buy the part that the Cabo Star needed. And he come in and he cleared it with customs and things. The minister buy the part, not the Port Authority and its engineers and their procedures and so on. A minister buy a part for the boat, and he put it below his arm and he walk through the airport and he bring it in. I will say no more about that until I get some documentation on who genuinely owns the Cabo Star. I call for an investigation into the Cabo Star and its true ownership. And so they attempted to bring in a next one. You all remember the Ocean Flower? You all remember the Ocean Flower? If you all, this new one they bring here, have to be the Ocean Flower twin brother. Between this and the Ocean Flower, which one beat up more than which, I don't know. This government it's almost as if they're running pick-a-pan competition on who could buy the oldest boat. Because the rationale is, bring old boat. disrupt the procedure, disrupt the bridge, disrupt cargo thing, so that the justification for always keeping the Cabo Star and maintaining that 26,000 US dollars a day, that is the real plan. A member of Rowley's cabinet is earning 26,000 US dollars per day on the Cabo Star. We leave that there for now, and I'll end with this. We leave that right there for now, and I'll end with this. So, this new boat that come in there, because if the Cabo Star came from a real company and a genuine company and we're doing legitimate business with these people, they would not have sent that to a country. This is not a construction firm doing some work in a gully somewhere and they say, hey, the boat break down, send a boat quick, you know. This is a country. And if Bridgman was a real company engaged in real business in Trinidad and Tobago with a real government, this could not, put it up there for me again, that could not be the replacement they sent. But you see, the truth is, Bridgman is imaginary. Come back to me, please. The truth is, Bridgman is an imaginary company. It's a bankrupt company that doesn't exist anymore. But somebody is using its name, generating checks in the sum of 26,000 US dollars a day that have now accumulated to $73 million. Somebody is using its name to write checks, and clearly they're being cashed. We're not going to sleep on this. I just thought I should alert you on this.